Yes, yes.
Okay.
Got it.
Okay, Michael. So we now have Michael Garcia with us, candidate for Republican Party of Texas chairman.
Yes.
So, Mike, we're going to go through some questions here today. There will be very few specific policy questions.
Sure.
Instead, there will be a few of those, but most of the questions are designed to get from you to reveal who Mike Garcia really is, what your core values and principles are, and what your vision is for the state of Texas, and also practical application of those things. In other words, how do you get the job done?
Sure.
So we have about 20 questions, and we have at the end, we're going to have a wrap up question so that you can close the deal to the
Okay.
folks. All right. So, anyway, we will begin. And none of the answers are timed. I think you have plenty of time to give a full answer.
Perfect.
Okay, please identify the character qualities, core beliefs, and experience that makes you the right choice for chairman of the Republican Party of Texas.
Yes. To talk about the core qualities, been a practicing Catholic for my whole life. I kind of owe it to my wife, who really brought me into the church when we started dating and take it a little bit more seriously. That was when I was in college at the University of Texas, and we've made it a point to live out our values, even when it's difficult. We have 4 children right now at home. They keep us busy, but and I miss them dearly doing this campaign stuff. But that's the whole reason we do it, right? Is for the generations coming after us, and we have a 5th child on the way in July. So uh, we we just try very hard to live out what we believe. Um, we homeschool our children just because I think the public schools do not adhere to any of the values, especially here in behind the Iron Curtain in Travis County. So it's a wonderful experience being able to direct their education in that regard. Um, and just from an early age, to speak to the Republican Party in general, uh, I come from the Rio Grande Valley. We were a Democrat household, which is not uncommon down there, but we were conservative. And when I was old enough to start paying attention to politics, I kind of realized that the two were not adding up with each other. And so in high school, I remember coming home and saying, I'm a Republican. And my family made fun of me and said, you're the black sheep of the family, you're a Republican. Which is funny because they all vote Republican now. Uh, which is indicative of what's going on, I think, in many different areas of the state, uh, but specifically the Hispanic community, and can't speak from experience to the Black community, but I think a lot of them are starting to come over too, um, because there is a realignment, and then also because the Democrat Party has just completely gone off the rails, crazy over the last few election cycles. Now, when it comes to experience, uh, for the job of running the state party, the state GOP, uh, I do like to point out my legislative experience, which I do think is, I hear a lot of people say the main objective of the party is to win in November. I think that's very important, but I also think that there's no point in winning if we don't bother to implement our party platform into law. I view that as the ultimate goal of the party. And I have tons of experience passing conservative bills through the legislature, mostly through the House, although I did do a stint last session as a chief of staff in the Texas Senate. But I've also worked alongside grassroots folks for a while, and have been involved in the party myself. I've been a precinct chair for a long time. I've run a Senate district convention at the county level, and at our lovely Zoom convention we had in 2020, I was a congressional caucus chair, and I have fun stories to tell about that one. Uh, and I've gotten to know a lot of the members of the SREC over the years, and I'm fairly familiar with a lot of the inner party workings. I'm sure there's still a whole bunch I don't know, but that's why we have to I have to kind of rely on other folks to guide me, which I'm always happy to do. But having that experience with grassroots folks and being in the trenches with them and believing them, believing in the same things they believe in, and then also kind of knowing the players in the legislature and in specific ways to get things through, not just at the 30,000 foot level like Schoolhouse Rock, but you know, I've been able to learn a lot about specifically the House rules over the last few sessions, finding points of order on bad Democrat bills. I've done that. I've stayed up many nights scrubbing Democrat bills, trying to find things to technicalities right in the rules to get them down at a point of order, but also defending Republican priority bills, doing the same thing, right? Because the Democrats will definitely bring it to us. So yeah, in a nutshell, I think that describes the values in my experience in why
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
Thank you very much. Okay, where can the job description for the RPT chair be found? And please cite your understanding of those official duties.
Yes, if I remember correctly, because I have been studying the SREC rules. I believe that's in Article 4, Section 2 of the SREC bylaws. And the job of the chair, essentially, in addition to the stuff that I talked about, right, leading the party in passing legislation, and of course the points I'm hitting on in the campaign trail, fundraising, recruiting good candidates, winning in November, and legislating platform into law. It's basically to preside over the SREC, right, the State Republican Executive Committee. Oftentimes the SREC can be quite divided, and I think we need somebody who can get everybody in the same room, and we're not always going to agree, and that's fine, because unlike the Democrat Party, we actually think about issues rather than just walk in lockstep. I think it's a feature, not a bug. I believe the chair has power over appointments to different committees as allowed by the SREC bylaws. Obviously, I believe there's an element the chair serves on the Republican National Committee, again, to the extent that the bylaws allow. Along with the SREC, the chair kind of coordinates the political activities of the party, manages the headquarters of the party, right? Because, and I would be in a unique position to do that here in Austin, and basically with the consent of the officials committee, engage in different lawsuits on behalf of the party. Those are just a few. I don't think that's an exhaustive list, but yes.
Okay, thank you. Where can you find the best indicator of what the Texas Republican Party's base believes about key issues? How do you believe the RPT can best demonstrate to its voter base that they have been heard? And how can you, as the chairman, lead that effort and be as specific as you can?
Yes, very good question. I think the best indicator would be, the thing I've been hearing, and I sincerely believe, is that our party, again, unlike the Democrat Party, is a bottom-up party, right? The chairman doesn't tell the SREC what to do, and the SREC doesn't really tell the county parties what to do, and the county party chairs don't tell what the precinct chairs what to do. It's the exact opposite, right? The precinct chairs are the ones that officially run the party, and having been a precinct chair for a while, I can tell you, these are the folks that are plugged in, not just with the news, but they're talking with people. I mean, it was through the precinct chairs, by and large, that this is kind of a story, but it's relevant. In 2017, I helped work on one of the proto versions of the women's privacy bill that wouldn't allow biological men in women's bathrooms. And talking among some of these folks, you could kind of, because they don't just keep a handle on our values and what we believe in, but they also keep a handle on what the left is working on, because this is the stuff they're running into in the community day in, day out. And I remember thinking, okay, we have this privacy bill. I got to go to some other offices that maybe aren't as conservative and see if they'll sign on. And a lot of them were greatly offended that we were working on this bill. And they said, you're going to drive all sorts of people away from the party. And I had to sit down with them and say, look, I understand that you might not see what's coming here, but this, at the end of the day, this isn't about bathrooms. This is about Western civilization. And they didn't really understand what I was talking about. And I got kind of run out of some offices. Within 2 years, that conversation, we weren't even having conversations about that anymore. We were talking about genital mutilation of children, right? It comes really, really fast. And the precinct chairs in the grassroots in general are the folks that keep a handle on that. And I think if more folks had paid attention to what they were saying at that time, we wouldn't have had to deal. I mean, we just got that done in the legislature last session, and it's something that should have been done much longer ago, because a lot of kids were harmed. So I know that's just one example, but I really do think that is where the pulse of the Republican Party comes from. And if gosh, I know there was a second part to that question.
Well, how do you believe the RPT can best demonstrate to its voter base that they have been heard, and
Oh, right.
how would you lead that effort?
Yeah. Well, like I said, it would come from them, and what we're coming toward here in May, toward the end of May at the convention is the best opportune time for us to hear about that, because that's when all the resolutions from the counties come up and are considered by individual SD conventions, and then by the entire convention itself. And so that is one way to kind of implement onto the agenda the items that come up in these conversations. And then the best way to let them know that they've been heard is to fight like you know what, during the legislative session to make sure that these are passed into law, and there's different ways of doing that, and dealing with members differently. But like I said, I've done that a lot in the past, and I think I would be effective in that regard.
Okay. Well, another sidebar to that are the ballot propositions that appear on the Republican Party primary ballot.
Yes.
How do you see how the voters voted on those as informing and shaping the direction of the Republican Party?
Yeah, well, I think those are important. So those come, from what I understand, from the RPT directly. So it's kind of like a feedback loop, right? Because RPT is supposed to listen to the chair, or to the voters, and then the voters get to kind of that is a way, I think, for the party to make sure that it's being accurate in what the voters are communicating to them. And from these last results, I think all I forget if there was, because I oftentimes confuse the numbers with the constitutional amendments. I think there were 14 this past time.
13.
13.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I believe all 13 of those passed with flying colors. And I've had a lot of folks from my church who know I'm involved in politics ask me about all of them, and said, well, they're probably all going to pass, and I can explain all of them to you, because I think generally the party does do a good job of listening to the folks that are deciding these things. But obviously all of them pass at different rates, so it's a way of figuring out how closely you're aligned with what people actually believe. I don't think it should be some sort of a game to say these absolutely have to pass. I think it should be used as a sincere tool to measure whether the party is not only listening to the message of the grassroots, but also listening to it with specificity.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Current party rules allow for the SREC to censure a Republican office holder who violates the party's core principles. Do you think we should have this rule? Why or why not?
I do. I believe you're talking about Rule 44 there, and I do believe in the use of Rule 44. I think it should be used as a reminder to different office holders as to what party they ran for and what party they belong to. I don't necessarily think it should be used as a retaliatory tool. Um, it should be there as a, as Christians, we're supposed to confront each other first individually, and then if that doesn't work, then we're supposed to uh, consult higher measures, and I you know the grassroots can't sue their representatives for disagreeing with them, but uh, they can certainly resort to Rule 44. And this is another example of how the local parties kind of run the party, right? Because the SREC doesn't come up with these censures by themselves. They bubble up from the ground, from individual precinct chairs who pass these resolutions, and then they're given to the SREC, and then the SREC will vote whether it's appropriate or not to censure. But absolutely, I think there's a little nuance there, right? Our party platform is very long, and there's going to be disagreements every once in a while. But if you are an elected Republican member of the legislature, and you are not in adherence with one of the core values of the Republican Party, or even one of the legislative priorities, I think censure should definitely be on the table.
Okay, thank you. As a follow-up to that, can you give some examples of actions that you believe represent clear violations of the Republican Party's core principles?
Yeah, yeah, happy to answer that one. I don't want to name anybody in particular right now, but we had a certain member of the Republican caucus a couple sessions back that was openly pro-abortion, and I just thought that was abhorrent. I believe she was censured. I'm not 100% sure, but if she wasn't, she should have been. Um, yeah, those are the kind of the core values I'm talking about. I know there's a lot of disagreements on marriage, maybe not as much as some people might think, but right, our not only our party platform and the core principles of the party, but our Texas Constitution, and most importantly, God defines marriage as between a man and a woman, a biological man and a biological woman. I have to specify these days, and I think even that should be on the table for censorship, because we cannot be giving an inch to the left right now. That is, uh, I have a line, right? I totally understand wanting to grow the party, but we cannot become Democrats in the process of doing that. And I think we just need to trust that God will direct us, and give us the strength and fortitude and knowledge necessary to be able to attract new voters without having to compromise our principles. So yeah, marriage, abortion, school choice, I think, is a very important issue. I know there's a lot of sincere disagreements on school choice, but it's either that or the public school system, and I already talked about that. At least here in Travis County, it's in the tank.
Okay. Um, if you are elected, what are the tangible metrics that Republicans should use to determine if you have been successful?
Sure. Well, I think that should be primarily based on the party platform. Like I said, the main objective of the party is to maybe not of the chair, but the chair leading the party is to implement the party platform into law to the extent that we can. It's in with a specific focus on the legislative priorities. But other ways, right? One of the projects I would like to, and I've been talking to a lot of folks across the state, is doing is I think we've done a good job with the local government committee in looking at down ballot races that are not necessarily partisan, but have a clear conservative, oftentimes have a clear conservative and a liberal running. And we need to get in on those races, not just on the ones that come up before us. One of the things I'd really like to do is kind of start a database of not just offices for folks to run for, but even just, I've been talking to a lot of city council members about library commissions that are appointed by the city council, and oftentimes they just appoint the one person that applies. I mean, those are offices that are ripe for the taking there, especially with the library problems we've been having with the dirty books in libraries. So I would like to set our own goals as well, obviously in conjunction with the SREC. This is not something that the chair or vice chair can go about alone. And also other grassroots organizations. This is going to be we're all going to have to work together on something like that. And then also an idea I have is we were doing the math the other day, and I think it's about 65% of incumbent Democrat House districts, to be specific, do not have a Republican running against them. And I've been around politics long enough to know that oftentimes the wisdom behind that is that, well, these seats just mathematically aren't winnable. Well, that might be true in the short term, but the way Democrats have gained ground in our state, I mean, we're only 11 seats away from losing the Texas House. That they've played that long game. They've done the incremental. Okay, well, we only had 35% this year. Next year we'll get 38%. After that we'll get 41%, and all of a sudden they end up winning the seat. So I think missed opportunities there to gain seats that we've lost in the past. And it's also a huge missed opportunity to show these minority communities that I talked about earlier who we really are, right? We're not ugly, mean people. The Republican Party looks a lot more like the Hispanic community than the Democrat Party does. And oftentimes it's just showing up at somebody's door and having a conversation with them. So yeah, I mean, metrics, doors knocked, offices filled, platform planks passed into law. Those are the types of things I would like to use.
Okay, thank you. If you were elected RPT chair, what percentage of the party's yearly budget would you like to see in donations of $100 or less? And what would the RPT need to do to increase the low dollar donations?
Yes, ma'am. Thought about that a lot. Obviously, we got to rely on big ticket donors, but I know in the past there's been a lot of different measures implemented in order to bring in those $100 or less donations. Whether it be a prayer breakfast, small prayer breakfast at the county level or even city level, having folks pay a small extra fee for their breakfast. And it's, we're not talking about raising $100,000 that day, right? But if you do that over and over the course of maybe even several per day, it adds up over time. And not only that, it allows grassroots folks to have skin in the game, and it makes it easier for them when you come around and say, hey, we need help with the election in November or May, or hey, we need some help block walking. They say, well, I've already invested into the party, and this shows that they're using that investment wisely. And I think it's another one of those feedback loops, right? They'll invest, and then they further invest their time, and then they realize it's having a return. So those types of things. Obviously, the party does a pretty good job of direct mail to potential donors and previous donors, and I think a good amount of the party donations come from those direct mail solicitations, which I don't know the statistics, but I imagine a lot of them are for 25 or 50 bucks. But I think we need to be creative about it, and I've been giving it a lot of thought. I'm happy to take any extra ideas, but I think especially in this not to disparage the platform we're on here, but in this Zoom post-COVID Zoom world we live in, I think people want to be together. So hosting these types of events where people can get together and talk and have that type of fraternity, I think is key for those small dollar donations.
Very good, thank you. There is a perception that party officials must place value on opinions of higher dollar donors over the identified priorities of Republican primary voters and those of the convention delegates who serve to represent the interest back home. Do you believe this is an accurate perception? Why or why not?
Yeah, I think with any high dollar donor comes the expectation that they're going to have a little bit more control over the sayings of the party. I mean, I just my experience, like I said, has been legislative. So I don't know firsthand if that's the case, but I can see why it would be. And I think the key to because I don't think that's appropriate at all. All right, you donate to the party because you believe in the party's principles, not because you want to control what the party does. I think the key to that is just telling these high dollar donors, look, we'll listen to you, and we'll consider what you have to say. But if it goes against what the party and what the grassroots and delegates have decided, our hands are basically tied here. And if you want to donate to us with some sort of quid pro quo, we're just, you'll take your money, but you're going to have to find somewhere else to get your goals passed. And a lot of people say, well, you might lose some donors if you implement that type of strategy, and that's probably true. But I've always been one to just kind of rely on doing the right thing, and I've always found that God might not provide what you want, but He certainly provides what you need to get by, and I would rely on God guiding our party, but He won't guide us if we start doing things that He doesn't want us to do.
Thank you. Do you support legalizing casino or online gambling in Texas? Why or why not?
I do not. There's other states that provide those forms of entertainment. I've heard a lot about that, especially working in the legislature over the last few sessions, which I've always found interesting because I don't think I've ever talked to a single precinct chair or grassroots activist or delegate that has ever said, my main issue is gambling and sports betting. Nobody talks about those things. It's a complete lobbyist driven effort. And yeah, maybe it's true that, again, talking about fundraising, maybe it's true that it'll expand our tax base and we'll be able to pay for all sorts of cool stuff. But the social evils that come along with those items, plus a lot of the proposals are just straight up protectionism against, the bill will say only 5 or so different casinos can get permits, and that's a form of gosh, the word escapes me right now, but it leads to all sorts of corruption. I think we call it a vendor bill in the legislature, right? It's somebody who comes and says, I have this great idea, why don't you all form a contract with me, and then we'll make it legally necessary that the taxpayers pay for this thing. And I'm in principle against those types of proposals, regardless of the morality behind the proposals. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Garcia, you have been in a little different role from some of the other candidates who are running for chairman, but nevertheless, I'm asking all of you the same question, so I'll ask you this one. Have you ever testified at a legislative hearing? And if so, can you remember when was that? How often have you done that and on what topics? So you can answer that in conjunction with the type of background you have.
Yes, ma'am. There are rules that prohibit legislative employees from testifying. But I can tell you, so no, I have not, just because most of my career, except for the small stint I took away to be in law school, I've been a legislative employee until recently. I recently opened a law practice, so you can be sure I'll be there, win or lose, testifying this next session. But I have trained a whole bunch of different types of folks. When I worked at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, I was the one kind of training all of their folks, what to do and what not to do in the legislative hearing, how to answer questions properly without getting overly confrontational. So I suppose you can say I've testified vicariously through other folks, but I myself have not for those specific reasons.
Okay, thank you. Do you support legalizing or decriminalization of marijuana in Texas? Why or why not?
I don't think it's a big issue that people are talking about, at least not in the recent past. I know there's some groups that have come by in the past, and that's been their main issue. I just I think there's research coming out more and more that shows that it's not very healthy for folks in the long term. I do understand the argument that alcohol is legal, so why can't marijuana be legal? But I again, in the same vein as legalized gambling and sports betting, it maybe it's true. Maybe we should tighten up our alcohol laws. I don't think that would be a very popular position, but I don't see any reason to bring any more social ills into the mix here, especially at a time like this where the world kind of seems to be hanging on a thread.
Okay, thank you. Please describe specific ways that you have supported the work at the conservative grassroots, the work of the conservative grassroots movement in Texas, or there are ways that you have engaged with them.
Yes. Well, most, if not all, of the legislative positions I've held, I was kind of working with grassroots folks directly on legislation, but probably not as much as when I was executive director and general counsel of the Texas Freedom Caucus during the 2021 session. I was meeting and talking to grassroots activists almost daily for the 3 years that I worked for them, and there's a lot of work and a lot of different people to talk with, and I think I remember specifically having a group with a very special group, having a conversation with a very special group about the private mandate, whether private companies should be allowed to mandate the COVID vaccine. And I was kind of struggling because I'm very pro free market, but I'm also very pro individualistic, and the group that I had this conversation with kind of steered me in the right way by asking me a question, right? Was the Constitution written for businesses, or was it written for individuals? And the answer to that question is clear. It was written for individual Texans and Americans. So not only have I worked with them, I mean, I think that session we passed constitutional carry, we passed some form of election integrity, but that's just kind of plain whack-a-mole these days. We passed the first ban on CRT/DEI in public schools, and we passed the first version of a ban on men and women's sports. All that was just out of the Freedom Caucus, the folks I worked with. Yeah, not only have I worked with them to pass legislation, but they have really kind of helped me refine some of my own beliefs. And I think we always need to be ready to do that, right? Because none of us are angels, and none of us are God, and all of us are wrong about one thing or the other, and we have to listen to each other in earnest in order to figure, especially some of these complicated issues during the COVID era, out.
Hey, thank you. Do you believe the Republican Party of Texas has done and is doing enough on election integrity and ballot security? Explain and be as specific as you can.
Yeah, like I just said, election integrity and ballot security seems to be a game of whack-a-mole. I think the party is doing the best it can to to address that specific issue, but I I do think there's a lot of work that needs to be done. There's a lot of different disagreements on whether we should go back to paper ballots or whether we should just overhaul the voting machines that we have in some counties. Uh, I think there's problems with both of those, and I think at the end of the day, if we don't get back to a moral society, right? President Adams is quoted as saying that our Constitution was written for a moral and religious people and is wholly inadequate for any other type of people. I think that's true, and we can overhaul our election laws all day long, but if we have dishonest people running them, there's really nothing we can do at the end of the day to save our republic. So it's not that we shouldn't be vigilant about it, right? And we should study a little bit more. It is not my area of expertise, but I do know a lot of folks that have strong opinions on that, and I'd be happy to work with them on different solutions. But again, I think our main objective there is bringing morality back into the mainstream.
Thank you. The next question has to do with in the business vernacular, a management style. But how does Mike Garcia persuade and influence others to work with him?
Yes. So my style is I wouldn't say it's unique, but I've had to deal with a lot of angry folks over the years and very strong personalities. And it's been a pleasure because, even though it gets difficult sometimes, I really do think that that's when the passion comes out, and it's good that we're passionate, right? Because the minute we lose our passion, that's when we give up. I have found the best way to get folks who disagree with each other, and I certainly have my own opinions myself, right? Is for us to either jump on a call or even better, get in a room. And first of all, we need to outline what our ultimate goal is, right? And oftentimes it's hard to agree on what that goal is, but if you spend enough time in a room together, and it might require a few meetings, you can usually build some sort of consensus. And oftentimes we're not going to agree on everything, but if we use the principles of the party and the platform as a guide, because very often I think folks will not openly admit to being against those things, it kind of helps put those disagreements through that lens and gives an objective measure for folks to agree on. And then we can build from there, right? And sometimes it requires a little bit of give and take, but that's okay. As long as we're not in violation of our basic principles, I think there's many different ways to get to the same goal. But it does require talking. It does require civil respect and civil debate and respect for each other, even if it gets extraordinarily heated. All you have to do is read the debates of the Texas Constitution or the U.S. Constitution to know that it got extraordinarily heated. But look what they came out with. It was a miracle, that document. And I think God works miracles every single day. I do think that prayer is an extraordinary part of that as well. Should always pray before these types of meetings, not only that God is with us, but that he's with all of the people who will be participating. And I think if we let him take control, and oftentimes that requires we put our ego aside, he will show us a way that is in conformity with his way.
Thank you very much. Think about a conflict or a fork in the road experience in which your life, you were at a crossroads. Maybe it was a painful experience. Maybe it was one that would have long-lasting impact. What shaped your decision-making and your actions And how did that experience inform your decision making today?
Gosh, well, I, I'm I'm sure I have quite a bit of those in my life if I had more time to think about it. But the most recent one I can think of with honesty is this decision to run for party chair here. Um, like I said, 6 months ago, I was on the tail end of the second session in a row where we worked 4 special sessions. I guess the session before was 3 special sessions. So this one was 4. I was heavily involved during the Senate impeachment trial last session as well, and it definitely took its toll. And I kind of decided, I looked at the kids at home, and I decided probably need to make a little bit more money in the long run to help support them. So I decided to take a step back from the legislature and start a law practice. Right. Um, during the course of that, uh, looked at Chairman Rinaldi. He's doing a great job at the party, and when he decided to bow out, I kind of started thinking, and other folks started asking me, what do you think about putting your name in? And like I said, I was kind of taking a step back. I was trying to be there for the kids a little bit more, and I am, right. I mean, they're here in town, but I just know from talking to other folks how fast it all goes, and so I had to decide, and am I gonna do this because I do think I could do a lot of good for the party, uh, or am I just gonna continue to sit back? And at the end of the day, I prayed about it a lot, and I also know it's a very thankless task, right? Being the party chair, it's if you're successful in navigating the ship, and we have a blowout in November, and everybody wins, you don't get any of the credit, and of course, if it goes the opposite way, you get all of the blame. But I'm used to not getting credit. I don't really care about getting credit. It's amazing what you can get done when you don't care about the credit. And I was looking at my kids, and I don't want them to grow up, especially the country's bad enough, but I don't want the state to go sideways, because there's not much else where we can go. Um, so it is a tremendous sacrifice running for this position, and a lot of people say, well, you have too many kids and you shouldn't be doing this, but again, I think God calls us to do things for different reasons, and we can either ignore that call or just follow him, even if the path is unclear, and see where it leads you. And one thing for certain is that if you do that, your life will never be boring. So yeah, I would say it's prayer is an extraordinary. I know I've been talking about prayer a lot, but I think we need more prayer in this country, and that guides me in my decisions, and it would guide me as party chair, because there's a lot of things that are uncertain in the future, but again, God provides. So don't know if I answered your question specifically, but yeah.
Okay, thank you. Reflect on the state of our state and the state of our nation with the serious challenges that are in front of us. Cite what you believe are the 2 greatest challenges for the RPT on how it should lead on these particular issues. And how would you do so?
Yeah. So I'll take a moral aspect and then a fiscal aspect. I think the 2 biggest policy problems, I guess, are our tremendous debt in the country. It is just a few years ago, I think it was half of what it is now. I remember when I was just getting involved in politics, I think we had a $3 trillion debt, and now it's 10 times that much. I think it's a very serious problem that a lot of people don't talk about. It's something I do wish President Trump did a little bit more on during his tenure in office. I think he planned on doing it during his second term, and I think I'm very confident he will win a second term. So I think he will take that a little bit more seriously. But I'm very concerned about that because I remember I'm certainly not a libertarian, but and neither was Ron Paul, right? He was a Republican the whole time he was in office, and he would always talk about monetary policy and fiscal policy. And I think he was one of the few members of Congress that actually understood that. I think maybe Thomas Massey is the member in Congress right now that understands that well. And this is a bad situation. And I hear a whole bunch of economists saying, no, this is sustainable. All we have to do is keep the printing press going. They are obviously ignorant about history, even recent history. And it's something I think we need to take a lot more seriously. Now, one thing that the party can do to lead in that regard is build on the successes that we've had. Right, we have an amendment in our Texas Constitution that doesn't allow us to go into debt. I think that would be a great amendment at the federal level. Not only that, we have a spending cap that we were able to pass to our Texas budget just a few sessions back. I think we did population growth plus inflation is the rate at which it's able to grow. Seemed like a great idea at the time. Now inflation is really high, so we might have to revise that a little bit. But at least we're going in the right direction. It's the complete opposite direction that the country's going, and I think if we provide an example to other states to do that, it'll catch on and hopefully eventually get to Congress before it's too late. The other problem is a social one, and it kind of splits our party a little bit. And I touched on it a little bit earlier, and that's the idea of growing the party and attracting young folks. And I think we do need to do that, but I think it is a huge mistake to do that by relaxing our principles and rejecting the biblical principles that made us great, not just as a party, but as a nation, right? I mean, people forget just a few years ago, President Obama in his first term was pro-traditional marriage, or at least he said he was. This was a popular item of the Democrat Party just a few years ago, and since then we've obviously lost that by and large, and now we're talking about mutilating children. Thankfully, I think the pendulum is starting to swing back. I was very worried a few years back that it was just going to keep going off a cliff, and I do think a lot of people are waking up. And obviously our state can lead on that. A lot of people say, well, you should put the marriage issue to bed. The Supreme Court's already spoken in the Obergefell decision. And I say, where would we be if we had taken that attitude on Roe v. Wade, right? The Supreme Court right now is ripe to start dialing the Constitution back a little bit, not just in terms of right, what Obergefell has to do with the equal protection and due process clauses, but also with the Commerce Clause, right, which has given the federal government an immense amount of power and was never intended to do that. So, no, I think passing clearly unconstitutional legislation is a way to make the Supreme Court kind of second guess its previous decisions, and it's something that we have to do if we're going to make any headway in dialing back the Constitution to what its original intent was.
Thank you. What character qualities do you value most in your relationships?
Probably, I would say honesty. I really do. A lot of people don't believe me. They'll give me a tongue lashing or something and on what they think or something I did wrong. I really do value when people do that, because not only is truth important, right? I think truth is the most important thing. I think we all need to stop being so nice to each other and tell each other what we think and stop being so sensitive. But it shows me, one, that you're passionate about what you believe, and that we can work together in terms of obviously if you didn't respect me, you wouldn't take time to take me aside and let me know what you truly think. So I do really value honesty. And it's okay if you disagree with me. That's perfectly fine. But What I don't like is when somebody says, yes, I agree with you, and then I find out through the grapevine that they've actually been working against a proposal that I've been working to advance. And then you know, in addition to honesty, I don't want to disparage any of our friends that have not accepted Christ or well, yeah, I think it's important to accept Christ, and I really do like it when I see a Christian operating in conformity with the values of Christian behavior, and I think it's been a little bit of a problem lately in our party, and um, I think we all just kind of need to remind ourselves that we're supposed to act like Christians, even when we're hopping mad at each other, and it's okay to be hopping mad, but we can't be getting down in the dirt because that's not how we're supposed to act. So uh, I would say that.
Thank you. What are your thoughts on extending opportunities for booth space at the Republican State Convention to groups whose stated mission violates the Republican Party of Texas platform?
Yeah, I'm squarely against that. I think I kind of know what you're talking about, but um, I'll use a different example. Well, no, I think you're talking about the controversy over the log cabin Republicans having a booth at convention. Like I said, that's a core value of our party, of our Texas Constitution. For a long time, it was of our United States Constitution. Well, I guess not explicitly, but I think you catch what I'm saying. No, I don't think we should. It'd be the same as if Planned Parenthood came and said, "Hey, can we have a booth at your convention?" And say, "No, absolutely not." And that is in direct violation of what of our core beliefs. And again, I don't think we should be soft on that just for the sake of wanting to grow the party. That kind of goes into that honesty quality. I've had to have a lot of tough conversations with fellow Republicans over the years in that I understand you believe this one thing, but as Christians, that's not what we're supposed to believe. And as Texans, it's in direct violation of our Constitution.
Mhm.
Now, if we're talking about a group that says, you know, I mean, let's say our platform says the rollback rate for property taxes needs to be no less than 3%, and there's a group that says we think it should be 3.1%. Um, I think maybe reasonable minds can differ, and we can talk about that. I don't think that would necessarily be a violation of our core principles. So no, I don't think you need to be in direct lockstep with every single plank of the party, but absolutely the core principles and the major issues and the legislative priorities. I don't think we should allow a group that is anti-school choice in that they are pro public school. I certainly understand the anti-school choice movement as it relates to not wanting the government to get involved with homeschool, and I think there's different ways to address that problem. So I want to be clear when I say that. But if they say no, public schools are great and we should send all of our kids to Austin ISD, no, they shouldn't get a booth either.
Okay. Thank you. Well, it wasn't so much specific on it. There's over the years have been controversies over a number of those things.
Right.
But I would say, you know, I surely would not expect the RPT to make it a practice to promote businesses that are against our platform.
Yep.
So let me just name some of them, which may or may not have a booth for this
Sure.
convention. Pro gambling, pro legalization of pot, pro legalization of prostitution, pro legalization of you name it. People that believe that we should get to net zero. I think that, you know, that are clearly anti-oil and gas. I think that there are bedrock principles that we would surely expect the party to be careful about who they allow themselves to affiliate with. So we'll move on. While cultural Marxism has been on the rise in our nation for many decades, the COVID shutdown pulled back the cover. And since then, more people have begun to see this threat to children and future generations. As a father and as a candidate for the RPT chairmanship, what do you believe the Republican Party can do better to protect children? And how would Mike Garcia lead on this issue?
Yeah. Well, protection of children starts with us, right? And it starts with us not letting our ground down. Like I mentioned earlier, this example of talking to other Republican offices about this coming the coming evils from the left about gender modification. It requires that we pay attention to what's going on in the world around us and not just going home and turning the TV on and forgetting the world. That if we do that, we're going to wake up one day and we're going to have lost our children, and they are going to become Marxists. And I just think it requires us to be engaged as adults. There's I was on a panel recently over at the Young Conservative Texas Convention, and one of the questions was on mentorship. And this kind of leads into my point about just not tuning the world out. I think we need to rely on folks that have been before, that have gone before, for advice on dealing with these issues, because our society's been changing for many years, right? This didn't start in 2017. It started. I mean, as a Catholic, I have views on when it started. I think it started during the sexual revolution, but obviously even before then, right? None of these things just came out of nowhere, and a lot of it was just, I think, because we forgot where we came from. We forgot that we were children of God. And so this mentorship question I was getting at from YCT is that, we constantly have to stay in contact with folks that have come before us. We have to stay in contact with our peers because they have a good view of how things currently are. And then we also have to be in contact with younger generations. I call it the 1/3 rule, right? A third of your folks have to be a little bit older, a third have to be your peers, and a third have to be younger. And the younger folks are dismissed a lot, especially, I see that all the time in the Capitol building. Oh, this person doesn't have any experience, so let's not hire them. I say, look, that person could be a state representative in 10 years, right? So you shouldn't completely write them off. And they're going to be running the world pretty soon. I mean, life goes by very quickly. So we all have to be talking to each other and making sure that we're all kind of in conformity with what our goals for the future are. Otherwise we lose the future. That's one thing that the left has done very well over the last 50 to 100 years is I think we've done a really bad job of taking for granted that children are not all leftists, right? I mean, you talk to my kids at home and they just kind of get a lot of this stuff by osmosis, but we'll talk about issues all the time and I won't tell them what to believe. I'll say, what do you believe about this? And they'll give some pretty good answers just based on the principles that they've learned. So that, and the way the Republican Party can help with that, to answer that question, is that I do think one of my main goals as party chair is to reach out to younger folks and bring them into the fold without compromising our values. I don't think young folks are. It really annoys me when I hear folks say we need to water down our values in order to attract the younger kids. Otherwise, they're not going to come. And I have to remind them, no, that is why they're not coming, because we've done that. They are actually attracted to tradition. They are attracted to principle, and I think it's very evident that kids that are versus kids that aren't are in a much better place psychologically. They're happier, and they're able to withstand the circumstances of the world in a much better way than than some of these kids that we've seen at UT over the last few days. I mean, I saw a DPS officer pick one up and carry him off like I carry my 3-year-old upstairs when he's having a tantrum. So, yeah, I think communication is key in that regard, and I've got some ideas bubbling, but I do think it's incumbent upon the party to help with that, but not just the party. That's a cultural thing as well.
Sure. Okay, so Mr. Garcia, we've come to the end of the questions. So the last couple of minutes we have here is your chance to say what you want to tell the people about why they should vote for you.
Sure.
You can raise an issue I've not addressed with you, but for in the last few moments, just close the deal with the folks.
Yeah. Well, I think I've been able to talk a lot about why I'm qualified for the job. But I really do think we're at a crossroads in our society. Like I said earlier, I think things are getting a little bit better, but they're not going to get better if we're not vigilant about it. And I do have experience in communicating to folks the direness of the situation, and it's a very dire situation. I think we're at a point right now where, depending on the decisions we make in the next few years, we are either going to see Western civilization turn around and thrive, or completely crumble and fall. And I think that can happen a lot faster than people think, because it's easy to become comfortable. What I would like to do as party chair, along with the things I've mentioned during this interview, help pass good legislation, is encourage people to do the hard things, right? God did not create us for the purpose of being comfortable. He created us for greatness, and that requires a sacrifice. And I think we just need to remind people that as Christians, we were commanded by our Lord to take up our cross daily and carry it. And that means doing the tough things. And that means we all have to do it together. It can't just be the party chair or the SREC, or even the precinct chairs or the delegates, or what we collectively call the grassroots. It has to be everyone. Everyone has to have skin in the game. And I think that I have the experience needed in order to lead that charge in a thoughtful and respectful manner that attracts folks to our party, and ultimately helps save our country and state. I think that's basically, obviously there's a million different policy issues we can talk about, closing the border, right, closing primaries, election integrity. We have our work cut out for us, but if we approach it with the attitude of, we know this is going to be hard, and we know it's going to be difficult, we know our hands are going to have to get dirty, it does kind of make it easier. And then if we know that we're doing it along with our Lord along the way, his yoke is easy, like he said. So that's what I would like to leave everyone with.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time this afternoon, Mike Garcia. Good job.
Thank you.
You're welcome.